Hi, everybody. Welcome in. I'm Kelly Kaczynski. I'm the Sales and Marketing Operations Manager here at SKSoft. Thank you all for joining us today. We also have Jennifer Courtney on the line. Jennifer, could you do a quick introduction?
Yes. Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer Courtney, SKSoft Customer Success Manager. Nice to have you on the call.
Thanks, Jennifer. Chuck Schrader is on with us as well. He'll be driving the AR cash application and credit card processing demo today. Chuck, could you do a quick introduction for us?
Yeah, hi, I am Chuck Schrader, and I am a senior solution architect here at SKSoft.
Thanks, Chuck. This landing page should look familiar. As you can see, our agenda for the next hour and every week at this time is to demonstrate our cash application automation solution, our credit card processing solution, and our customer-facing online bill pay portal for D365. If you see anything else on this landing page that looks of interest to you or to colleagues of yours, you can continue to use this web page to register for our sessions. Here you can see the additional functionality we offer that is not demonstrated in our weekly demos. AR direct debit, payment factory automation, in-house banking, supply chain finance, bank-to-bank transfer, customer reimbursement, and P-card reconciliation are some of the other modules we offer for D365. If any of these buzzwords sound interesting to you or to colleagues of yours, I'll be sending out an email here shortly after the session with the recording. So you can just reply to that thread and we can provide you with more information and or schedule a custom demo for these models. So for a little background on who we are and what we do, we are a strategic ISV with Microsoft. We've been in business for almost 30 years now, and we developed quite a bit of expertise in building quality software solutions like you'll see today. Rick Sandler and Tim Kahn, the S and the K in SKSoft, opened shop in 1995, where they wrote our very first product for an ERP platform called Solomon, which several years later, it was renamed Dynamics SL when it was acquired by Microsoft as they made their move into the ERP space. And today we are the solution of choice for banking, treasury, and credit card processing in the Microsoft channel. So that's a little on how we got started. And that's where all of our focus has been and continues to be. The D365 environment is the primary ERP we serve today. We are one of the first 5 ISVs to have our code certified for Microsoft's pivot into our cloud-based solutions. Ever since the beginning, Rick and Tim followed Microsoft's investments and has paid off very well for us and our customers. We continue to have record-breaking sales years and see that our value and compatibility makes us one of the most used ISVs in the channel. Our solutions are written in the same code as D365 and is a certified and preferred offering. Chuck will show you where our solution sits in D365, but it's really hard to notice because our modules have the same look and feel as D365. Being in business as long as we have, we've developed quite an extensive customer base. We have over 1,600 customers globally and 700 plus that are using our solutions in D365 and AX environments. Below, you can see a sampling of some of our more well-recognized customers. As you can see, it's a very wide range of logos. Obviously, the Cowboys have very different needs than Tesla, but we feel that this really speaks to how our solution can scale and help out in any industry. This is my last slide for today. We want to make this demo as valuable as possible for you. So if you have any questions at any point in time, feel free to jump in and unmute, or you can use the chat room, and I'll turn it over to Chuck.
Thanks, Kelly. So as Kelly said, this is our last slide. Actually, when we go through the demo, we'll go through the cash application pieces first and then the credit card second. But to avoid kind of going back and forth from live to demo to PowerPoint, we'll just cover this here. A couple points about our credit card processing we're trying to convey here. One point is that there are 2 separate credit card offerings. If you look to the far right, you can see something called ePay Advantage. So ePay Advantage is serving invoices out to a customer-facing portal. The customer would sign on to that portal and make e-check or credit card payments, and it seamlessly comes back into D365 to complete the process. The middle piece there, you see Credit Card Advantage. That is taking a credit card inside of D365 in a standard D365 process. So taking a credit card in a payment journal to pay off existing invoices, or taking a credit card as part of a sales order process to authorize the card and then finally charge the card when you invoice the sales order. So two distinct offerings there. They can work together or separately. The Credit Card Advantage also has hooks. You can kind of see to the right there, there's e-commerce. We don't have an e-commerce product, but if you have a Sana or Magento or whatever that for e-commerce and you are authorizing, tokenizing the card there, and then authorizing the card and passing an order into D365, we provide the hooks for you to be able to do so and then complete the process inside of D365. Second kind of important point here is that you can see currently all roads there converge at PayFabric. That's a kind of intermediary we go through to talk to those list of gateways you see there at the bottom. That is the currently supported list of gateways. We expect that to significantly increase here around year end when we're looking at some other processors there to add to that list instead of just PayFabric, which will again expand the gateways out quite a bit. But if you were going to implement today, that is the supported list of gateways. So you'd need to be on one of those or be willing to move to one of those in order for it, our products to work for you. Any questions on there before we move into live demo? Not, and I'll take over the sharing. And hopefully we can see D365.
Yes, looks good, Chuck.
Okay. So we're going to cover, like I said, the cash application first. And the first part of that is really taking in a payment file and processing that payment file to try to get those payments applied to the correct invoices, the correct customers. So we call that process e-settlement/lockbox. Typically, this is a lockbox file coming in, although we've had customers that use other sorts of payment files as well coming in. The key is that it has payment information and hopefully remit information as well. So in other words, not only the check, but the check stub information works best. So first, we're just going to go ahead and import those files. And we're going to apply a set of rules when we do so to try to apply those to the correct customers and invoices, as I mentioned. So we're going to go ahead and I have a file queued up here. We're going to go ahead and import this file. It's applying those rules. It brings me to a summary page that shows at a very high level what the totals were, what the counts were, if there's things that were in error or not. So again, this is just a summary page. And the workbench, though, is where we can really see what is going on, what worked and what didn't. So if you see where I got this little slider going up and down in the middle here, there is a grid above and a grid below that. The grid above, the good grid, basically things where we could figure out the customer, as you can see. And if there were invoice references present, that we were able to resolve those into invoices that were open. So there weren't any problems with basically the remit information. In the error grid is this really just the flip side of that. So if something's in the error grid, that means that there was either something wrong with the customer itself or something wrong with the invoice. In this case, there was no invoice information sent in, so we can see this is empty. That in and of itself is okay, that we don't have any invoice information, but that does mean we need to figure out the customer some other way. Normally, the best way to figure out who is paying us is by looking at what they are paying. So if they're paying for an invoice and that invoice belongs to a given customer, we can assume the payment is for that customer then. So again, we're eventually always trying to resolve an invoice. So again, this in and of itself isn't an error. It just makes it a little harder to figure out who this payment is coming from. At that point, we're looking at either the name or the bank account information coming in. So when you write a check, the routing and account is across in that MICR line of every single check that you write. So when the banks scan those, they pass that information along, the routing and account that that check belongs to. The first time one of those account numbers come in, we of course don't know who that belongs to. but in this workbench process, if you assign something to a customer, then behind the scenes, we're learning that this customer belongs to this checking account. And the next time in, we see something coming in from the same account, we can usually then suggest the right customer and help out in that way. So in this case, again, no invoice information. We did have customer information, but we actually have multiple Walmarts on file, so that didn't help us really much either. At this point, we would either need to look at backup information or maybe just based on experience, we know where this payment belongs. So in this case, we know, in our case, Walmart sends in a payment for multiple of their retail stores on a regular basis. So I'm going to assign it to one of the stores for now, and we're going to sort this out a little more in a little bit here. But that allows me, getting it to a customer allows me to put it in this good grid. Once the error grid's empty, any point after that, I could really create a customer payment journal. So that's the end goal, creating a customer payment journal and posting it. However, there's a couple things I normally want to fix up in this screen before I push it to the payment journal. And one of these we see on the very top line, which is an unsettled amount. So if a payment where it all didn't settle, not sure about your company, but we generally don't expect overpayments. We generally don't expect someone just to send us a payment that's not going to apply to an invoice. We don't expect prepayments in general. So if so, we're going to have unsettled amounts here. If we don't find the corresponding invoices, and we normally want to try to get those settled to invoices before posting this payment. The other thing we look for, and we don't have any of those in this particular case, is were there any payments that didn't fully settle an invoice? So this was a $46,000 payment. It did get fully utilized. There's nothing unsettled. But we also want to make sure that we weren't trying to pay off a $50,000 invoice and we just short paid it. So we see this little indicator on the far in this little status field here that shows that yes, these indeed are fully settled. So whether it's a single invoice like this or multiple invoices in the second example, again, we want to make sure that things are fully settled. If not, we'll probably want to investigate why someone short paid a particular invoices. So we can go to the settlements form to look at either one of those cases. Again, we'll just take a look at this first one here. This has nothing settled. So we'll go to the settlement screen. I have mine set to come up empty. I could have it set to come up and load their existing transactions in here. That would be one way to settle that. In fact, I could click load open transactions manually here and kind of check them off one by one. For this Walmart customer, I have it not do that because I know that they send us in a remit advice. And if we have a remit advice, there's a little easier way to do this, where I just go ahead and grab this. And notice I'm not being particularly careful about just getting the invoice numbers. I just kind of got everything there for a quick cut and paste. What remit text analysis does is it looks through those, tries to figure out what the invoice numbers are, and go ahead and apply to those invoices. You can see on this that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 invoices, and then there's this damage claim here as well. So I'm going to click analyze. It's going to sort through that, and it kind of fills out the settlements for me. You can see there's only 2 on here, and I said there were 4 invoices referenced there. But if we look up top, you can see there's also another blue line. It says there's a payment added. If I back out of here for a second, we can now see that there's 2 Walmarts up here. So as part of that analysis, it went through and figured out that several of those invoices were for a different Walmart store. So it split that out into a payment. So it was a $15,000 plus payment. Now you can see that it's split out between the 2. So actually, I didn't point this out on the initial import, but you can see at the bottom here, the same thing happened on the initial import. You can see that that reference number is the same as the one right below it. And if you look to the column right to the left of that, you see that the split payment indicator is on both of those lines. That really came in as a $1,043 payment and just got split because the invoices that payment referenced are for 2 separate customers. So again, the splitting can occur on initial import or when we're working through the settlements as well. We're getting a lot closer here to being able to push this to payment journal, but now we have this being oversettled a little bit. So this $95.66 payment oversettled by $5. And if we remember on the remit advice, we can probably determine why that shows oversettled. because we had this damage claim here. So this obviously is not a credit note that I issued them. If it was, and they actually referenced a credit note, it would go ahead and match that up for them. But this is kind of an ad hoc claim, it looks like. So there's a couple things I can do there in the settlements form. One, I could go and create I could go and short pay this, I guess. So I could go and just say, I'm just going to subtract $5 off the settlement amount. It's going to leave an open balance on this particular invoice. They didn't reference a particular one, so I just need to pick one and short pay it. But then someone would have to go through and settle that out at some point with either a true credit note or go in and maybe rebill the customer for that $5. Chances are for $5 on a $15,000 payment, I'm not going to go ahead and chase that up. So there's another thing we could do here called create write-off. And I'm just going to put in -5. Put in -5. There we go. And we're marking this as damage. As part of the setup, I associated reason codes with ledger accounts, and I had some defaulting done. If it didn't default in, I could just simply pick something. And again, it's in the setup, you associate the reason codes with general ledger accounts so that it puts the accounting in there for you as well. Once I do that, I go ahead and click create write-off. It's issuing an immediate free text credit and using that then to balance this payment. So now we can see the free text credit was issued. It's now this payment is applied to that as well. So now we're in balance. The difference is 0. So again, option 1 could have short paid it. Option 2, kind of the quick and easy write-off. There is a third option that's a little bit more managed option, I'll call it. That is deductions. If I put something in as a deduction, a lot of times this is more things around promotions, volume discounts, that sort of thing. This, if I put something in here, instead of that quick write-off, it goes to a screen Microsoft calls the deduction workbench. In that deduction workbench, then someone can make decisions about whether or not to allow a particular deduction. So again, the write-off very quick and easy. The deductions more managed, where somebody comes in here and says, yes, this was deserved, so I'm going to go ahead and write it off, or no, this wasn't deserved, so I'm going to deny this. It'll put the balance back on the customers. Again, this is a standard D365 screen. From our standpoint, if you put something in here, we just feed into that process of standard D365. But we went ahead and did the write-off in our case, so we'll go through with that instead. By the way, many of our clients get things including us, in our lockbox that are not truly lockbox items. So maybe it's some kind of a miscellaneous income or whatever that came in there. In that case, I don't need to assign it to a customer. I can go ahead and just reassign to ledger. Notice there's one of those in the error grid. Chances are you'd probably be using it down here because if it couldn't find a customer, it would be down here in the error grid, and I would just reassign it to a ledger account instead of a customer and let it flow through that way. But anyways, we're in balance now. We don't have anything unsettled. Everything we did touch is fully settled at this point. So now we can go ahead and create payment journal. If I was trying to roll this into a different payment journal, I could specify it. If I leave it blank, it simply tells me it's going to create a new one, and then it creates the new journal. By the way, I'm not doing an auto post here, but you can set this up to auto post. You can set it up to auto post and create deposit slips if that's your practice. It's create deposit slips as well. Today, we're just going to go ahead and look at this to make sure it did what we said. So if I look at the payment journal, I can see that's basically looks a lot like that workbench grid. So it has everything filled in. If I go to one of these and say view marked transactions, it's going to have those same transactions marked. So normally I'm not drilling into the payment journal. Again, many of our clients have that just set to create the journal and auto post, and then you just go on to the next thing. So that's kind of the process there. We got a file from the bank. Typically, that can be either manually downloaded from the bank, or we can automatically download it with Bank Fabric. If you were in yesterday's demo, we talked a little bit about Bank Fabric being our connection. It's hosted by SK, and it's our connection between D365 and the banks, and D365 and your Azure storage. But Bank Fabric can automatically download the file from the bank, or you can manually download it. You can manually import it, which is what I did today, or you can set it up just to import on a batch schedule of every hour, look for files and import them that way as well. And then once we imported it, the rules gave us, quite a bit of things that it figured out for us. And then we manually used the settlements form and the error grid to kind of work through the remaining issues and create the payment journal. Any questions on that flow or process? It looks like maybe there's something in chat. Let me look here. The question was around Pay Fabric. That is more, I think, on the credit card side, or if you want to clarify that question, could try to answer.
Yes, hi, Vince here.
Yep.
If the merchant is also with the invoice collecting a surcharge fee, does that roll over as a over settlement? Did it break it out as an over settlement?
If
Does it
they,
track?
so you're bringing stuff into this lockbox process from a processor, like a credit card processor or something?
Pay Fabric is adding the surcharge fee to the invoiced amount.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I'm kind of questioning the credit card stuff kind of usually takes a different avenue in is why I'm asking. But so there is a way to record fees in here. Actually, I'm in the payment journal now. But in the workbench, there is a way to record fees in here as well. So you can do that. Normally, I said those aren't not coming in through this process, but I'm trying to think how that would look in here. It would probably look like an over settlement if you're getting the full credit. Again, depends on what file you're kind of importing here. Are you importing a net file or a gross file from your credit card processor? And normally we wouldn't expect those to kind of come through this, but if they are charging a fee outside, a lot of times they'll have a net and a gross column in there. So in other words, this was the gross charge, but the net that you're getting out of that is lesser because they charge a fee. Again, I have to kind of, I guess, we could look at that. I can talk about that more in the ePay side of things, but if you have a fee being charged, you can put a fee in here as well.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Couple things that kind of make this click. One is, what are you getting in for this file in the first place? So we have a format screen. If you were here yesterday, like everything we do starts or ends with a format, but we will go in and
Before you move forward, there was a
Yep.
another quick question in chat about if you could demonstrate it if there's no invoice to settle a payment.
Yeah. So when actually the very first time I brought this up, if you remember, I brought this up and the whole thing was unsettled. I mean, I could push it over to payment journal at that point as an as an unapplied payment, if we wanted to. So if you have prepayments, there is a way to mark things as a prepayment as well. If you mark it as a prepayment, it goes to D365 as a prepayment. And that this usually just uses a different posting profile. So you can either just put it over there as an unapplied payment, or if you use the prepayment processing in Microsoft today in D365, you can mark it as a prepayment as well. That answer the question there?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Okay. So again, kind of the related things, I won't go deep into setup here, but one of the things is having that chat with your bank up front. What can they provide? If they can provide something they call a wholesale lockbox BAI file, that's usually your best input. Many US and Canadian banks can provide that. Outside the US, some provide this ISO file called a KMT54, and we can read in commented limited files as well. You can see the other types. The EDI ones, the only thing I would caution about EDI is EDI tends to differ customer by customer. So if you're really trying to read in EDI files and you have a bunch of different customers, chances are you'll have to set up multiple formats because the customers, even though EDI is a standard, they tend to use those differently. And then you can also see Wells Fargo here. They have their own proprietary Wells Fargo Receivable Manager file that we can read in as well. So step number one, what can the bank provide? One of the questions always when you're doing this with the bank is, hey, I got a lockbox, but can I also get my electronic payments in here as well? Some banks can do that, and some banks do better at that than others in terms of basically peeling off your incoming ACHs and wires and including them in the same lockbox file. If they do so, typically then you're going to say split these out by batch because they'll put those in a separate batch, and the checks you'll want to roll up into a deposit. The wires and ACHs you don't want to roll up typically. So what can you get from the bank? Again, not prior day, but there's something called prior day BAI, which is bank rec. They have something different though called a wholesale lockbox BAI. That's the one you'd want if you can get it. The other thing that really kind of key part of setup then is what are we getting in and how are we trying to match? So if we look in the matching rules, this is where we determine how we can match. So normally we want to set this up to always use the remit information first if you get remit information. So that's going to be the most accurate way to figure out who the customer is. And it's really the only way to figure out if you have a split payment is by using, what are they paying for? So normally we're going to have rules like this first. We're trying to look up, if there's a reference coming in, first see if it's an invoice number, then see if it's a sales order number. And you can see the other types of things we can look for, requisition, bill lading, those types of things as well. These next ones, these customer and ones, the next two, that is, we don't have any remit information, but we were able to figure out the customer, either by name or by the bank account information I mentioned earlier. If we were able to figure out the customer and we know the payments for $1,093, and this customer happens to have an invoice outstanding for $1,093, we assume that's what they were trying to pay off. Likewise, if that's their total open balance outstanding, we can assume they were trying to pay off their invoice, their total open balance. The next one down, remit text data, that's the one that made that cut and paste window work. We're working on some future enhancements to that process, but for right now, that cut and paste window, it still saves a lot of time. One of my best examples, a customer is a lumber company. They have big box stores like Lowe's and Home Depot as their customers. They would get a payment in from Home Depot weekly. That was anywhere from 100 to 300-400 invoices paying for. It used to take them about 20 minutes to apply that one payment by going into Payment Journal and kind of clicking things off one by one. Now they get the PDF in of the remit advice. They cut and paste it in that remit text window, and it takes them about 20 seconds instead of 20 minutes to apply that one payment. So those, again, there's other kind of setup pieces that you can tell what to do with, over shortage, that sort of thing. But these are kind of the key pieces here. What file you're getting in, and then what are your rules to try to handle the payment information that you do get in. There's kind of some, I should say, some related pieces here. One is auto settlement. So for some of our customers, this is a big deal where they get a lot of these situations, others not so much. But auto settle really is going through and saying, let's say on that Walmart example before that I actually did short pay it. So now I got a $5 balance. And some of our customers have like outside systems that are processing credits or something. So a credit comes in for $5 and they're both sitting there on the customer. So now I have a $5 debit, $5 credit, both sitting on the customer. What AutoSettle does is it goes through and tries to clean all those up. So and apply them to each other. And it can do single to single, single to multiple, multiple, multiple. So it's going through and just trying to clean up debits and credits that are really what I'll call mirrored transactions on the same customer, where debits and credits equal. And it's going to try to apply those to each other so you don't have to kind of tediously go through and figure those out one by one. So again, some of our customers, that's kind of a big deal. Others saying, yeah, we really don't have that situation. A couple other pieces that are kind of in beta and coming up, and I don't like to talk too much about future vaporware, if you will, but these are close enough to real that we can talk about them a little bit. One is this payment remit automation. So payment remit automation is basically, I mentioned you can get wires and ACHs. Some banks provide those in a lockbox, some don't. Well, if they don't, and they're just payments coming in your bank rec, now somebody needs to deal with those payments and get those applied to the right customer coming in your bank rec. What payment remit automation does is it tries to help you do that. So the first part of it is there's an OCR engine that is monitoring a inbox from your remit advices and turning those remit advices into data. And then the second piece is when your bank rec comes in and your bank statement line comes in that it's identified as a customer payment, it's going out and saying, hey, do I have a matching remit advice to marry up to that automatically? And those show up here in this process customer settlement form. Let me see if I have some in here. This is still in beta, so I got some pretty weak data in here yet. But basically, if it links up to some of that scanned data, it'll apply it. If it doesn't, you can come in here and manually settle these. So you can use some of those same tools that we had in Workbench over there. If you had again, a remit advice that it either hooked up automatically with a set of rules, or you can manually link it to one, it can fill out this grid for you. This is really a view into the bank rec process, showing only customer settlements. So for one thing, it kind of has the separation of duties there where you can give somebody visibility, a Cash App person visibility into those payments without giving them full access to the bank rec process. But the other nice thing about that is if I go through here and I settle this and create the journal, so I get these done, I create journal entries for them, the bank rec process clears at the same time. So it is just a view into the bank rec process, only showing Cash App folks the payments in there, not the rest of the whole bank statement process. So payment remit automation, scanning and then taking an inbox, taking those remit advices that you're getting in for electronic payments, turning them into data and marrying those up to the process into the bank statement lines and settling those out. Hopefully later this year, maybe early next year, we were now taking that same scanning process and going to work it into that into the ARE settlement process that we just showed. So instead of cutting and pasting, the hope is there then that we will be doing the same thing. That remit advice was already scanned. I'm just going to look for these scanned things and automatically do it versus having to cut and paste it in there. Again, we're expecting that in end of year-ish. This is in the product today and is at a couple sites. We're still considering it beta, but we expect it to be full production by year end as well. So some exciting things coming up that we think as more customers move to, or at least a lot of our customers are submitting payments electronically versus check to speed up that process quite a bit as well. Any questions on the cash application side of things before we switch to credit card payments? Don't see any new in chat or raised hands, so we will go across here. So I'll go through the CCA product first. So if you remember Credit Card Advantage or CCA, that is taking payments inside of a D365 process. So there's two main processes where we would take payments, credit card payments. One is in Oh, I'm in workspaces. No wonder it didn't look familiar. One is in the payment journal itself. So we'll go ahead and do that first. And let me click new here. Just make a new one. So I'm making a new payment journal here. I am going to put in just a single line. I know this customer has pending invoices, so we will pay one of those. I'm just going to pick a single one. I could go to settle transactions and pick multiple ones as well, but we'll go ahead and just pick this one for now. Make sure it is a credit card method of payment, which this is. By doing so, this credit card payments button lights up. If I have a default card on file, in other words, this customer paid by card before and we kept a tokenized version. By the way, when I said a card on file, we never ever have a full number inside of D365. It's always a tokenized version, so last four and the expiration. We never keep a whole payment, a whole credit card in the system. But if I have a card on file, I can just click new. It fills out the whole thing for me, and I'll tell it to go ahead and process the credit card. So pretty straightforward if I have one on file. If I don't have one on file, there's a preferred way and probably a not recommended way. I'll go through the not recommended way, but so I can go in here and I can enter a card on behalf of a customer. So if I go in here, notice the new button's grayed out. If I go to Pay Fabric, Create, it's going to bring up a dialog hooked directly to that Pay Fabric vault. Again, we never want a full number in D365. When I close this out, it's going to sync that card back into D365 when I come back to this screen. Again, that's okay way to get it in there, but even then, in that case, I heard the customer's number. If I'm on a office network or worse yet, maybe I'm on a home network, my network now that full number went across the network and everything. We have something called Pay Link that avoids that PCI compliance exposure. As long as I have a mobile or an email, I can go ahead and send a link to the customer for them to enter their own credit card information. There's two pieces there. You saw that one is called PayLink. PayLink is a request for a credit card in the context of a transaction. So I'm in the middle of this transaction here. This transaction has a value to it. So it's taking a credit card in the context of, hey, it's immediately going to be charged for this amount. There's another concept called wallet link. So if I'm signing a customer up and saying, hey, you signed up for X service, so I need a credit card on file, you can send a wallet link out, which is really just that same request, but not in the context of a transaction. So this is the part where we normally do the little drum roll to make sure that a live email worked without delay, and it did. So this is an email I just got now in my inbox, the one we just sent out. So if I click on that, you can see, again, we're in the context, so it shows me a transaction there. I can come in and say pay by credit card. And then again, this is the customer doing this. I have a card on file. Normally I wouldn't send it to someone with a card on file. So it'd normally come up with a enter new wallet. If I go and why don't we make this check 0905 so we know it's today's, because I tend to use the same number over and over. I don't know that many test card numbers. And we'll put that way out there. And again, this is the customer putting this information in. If we go back in D365, I didn't really point this out, but you can see pay link pending. So if someone's looking at this, they know there was a link sent out to a customer that's waiting to be resolved. There is a batch job that's looking for those. You can set that to run every 5 minutes, every 15 minutes, whatever you like, to go ahead and just pull those in automatically. Since we don't really want to wait that long, I can just click refresh. Maybe I'm on the phone with the customer and I know they resolved a link. I click refresh, it's going to bring it in, look, see if it was resolved right now, and try to bring it in. So we see it brought it in here. There's the capture to apply it to this line. If we back up to the payment journal line itself, we can see now that this line is in approved status. And if I back up another one, I have a setting set on that says if the only thing holding up this journal was a pay link, whenever that pay link comes in, go ahead and post the journal as well. So I could have left, went on with other parts of the demo, just came back to this later. This would have already posted on its own. Again, if I was on the customer with the customer, I know they did it, I could just hit refresh and get it done right now. So if I go in, so any questions on that payment journal process, taking a credit card on an existing invoice? And you could do it, by the way, you could do that as a prepayment as well. So I don't necessarily have to have an invoice. I can do it as a prepayment. If I do it on a credit invoice, it's going to issue a refund and it's going to ask for a reference back to the original card that was charged. Normally your gateways or your processors don't like to see unreferenced credits coming back. So normally, unless you specifically tell it to ignore that, it's going to ask you for the original charge that it is trying to credit back. Move over to sales orders here. On the sales order itself, it's a little bit different process than the payment journal. The payment journal was kind of like walking out of a retail store. Once you charge it, it's done. It's a single kind of click, if you will, and the card is charged. Sales order works more like the hotel or rental car experience. Normally, you're going to want to authorize the card up front, which is basically holding the money on the card until you get to invoice time, at which point you're going to fully charge the card. So while I'm going through the sales order process, if the customer is a credit card customer, I probably want to make sure that they actually have that amount of, credit card limit on their card. So I'm going to authorize the card up front. There are 4 places that you can automatically authorize, and you can turn any of those on or off. 4 places are pick, pack, sales order confirmation, and if you have Microsoft's advanced warehousing, release to warehouse. We basically put a authorization wave step in there at the very beginning. If you have any of those turned on and the sales order goes by that checkpoint, it's going to check if you have a valid authorization. If not, it's going to make sure you do. So if you don't have one at all, it's going to do an authorization at that point. Again, this is only if the checkpoint is turned on. If you have an authorization already, it's going to make sure it's valid. So if it's expired, it's going to reauthorize. If it is not for enough money, because now I've added additional things onto the sales order after the original authorization, it's going to void the original and then reauthorize for the higher amount. So, by the way, if I don't have a credit card on file, I can still send out the pay links here. This is authorization pay link. The capture pay link is really going to be more like a prepayment. So it's going to immediately charge it and then apply it as a prepayment to this particular sales order. The thing that drives this in the sales order, if I switch to header mode here, is the payment terms. So if you go down to the payment terms, there's credit card terms. This is the same customer I used before. It had that default card, so it put all that information in here as I made the sales order. I did this sales order offline and put a line in it because, again, this demo tends to run a little bit tight on time a lot of times. So I prepped the sales order there. If I want to take a prepayment on a sales order, I can do that. Again, I can send out a capture pay link, which is a prepayment. If I have a card on file, I can simply just click credit card prepayment, pick the card I want to use. And by the way, you notice now there's not only this card, but this new one I just made as well. Anyways, let's say that I want to pick maybe 3/4 of this roughly down, or 2/3. I can go ahead and put that in, click OK. It's going out, fully charging the card, posting the payment, and then attaching that payment to the sales order. So this sales order will get, that payment will get applied to the sales order when we post. So we can see now this guy's hanging out here. It's attached to the sales order, but it's not paying it off just yet because we don't have an invoice just yet. I mentioned the places you can automatically authorize the card. You can always manually authorize the card as well. So if I authorize the card, it's always going to be for the full amount of the sales order minus any prepayments. So if I go ahead, we go ahead to what, a 710. was our total. We authorized 500 already, so it's our 510 already, so it's authorizing the remaining amount here. If I go to the invoice, I'll skip kind of a few steps here since we don't really need to pick or pack or anything. We already have the authorization. And invoice is always a little bit slow. Yes, I want to invoice. Yes, I know I didn't print it. It's really doing quite a bit with that one step here of doing the invoices. So it's of course making the invoice itself, posting a new invoice. It's then going out and saying, hey, I have this prepayment I need to apply against the invoice, and I have this final payment I need to capture and apply against the invoice. And it did all that as part of the invoicing step. Just in case there's people that won't believe me, we will drill into the transactions to make sure that all happened. And by the way, this is the same one I used for the payment journal, so we should be able to see kind of everything down here. So we can see if we go to the bottom, there is the $710 sales order. It has a zero balance. There's that $500, $510 prepayment, and then the final charge. All of these have a $0 because they've all been applied to each other. This payment here was that payment we took in the payment journal. If I have a payment in a payment journal and I want to undo it, I just click reverse credit card payment. It's going to free up that invoice that credit card payment paid. Then it's going to issue a refund payment inside a payment journal, and then it could optionally post that for you as well. So pretty easy to reverse it out if you need to do that. On a sales order, it's a little bit different in that you're going to run through the RMA process. So if you run through the RMA process and the sales order had a charge on it, a credit card charge, it's by default going to try to refund back that credit card, that same credit card, when you go ahead and run through the RMA process and invoice that RMA. Any questions on those taking a credit card inside of D365? Didn't see any chat or raised hands, and the mics are unmuted as well. So we'll move on to ePay. If you remember Credit Card Advantage, taking a card inside of a payment journal, taking it inside of a sales order, that's the part we just did. ePay is serving invoices out to a customer-facing portal. So once the initial setup's done, the way you designate that an ePay customer is an ePay customer is you simply go down and just say, yes, this is an ePay customer. By the way, if you're rolling out this to a bunch of customers at once, there is a bulk way to do this as well. You can say, hey, all the customers with credit card terms, or all the customers in class or group, whatever, all get signed up for ePay all at once. Once I check this to yes, several things happen automatically. As soon as I save this, and again, this one was already done, but as soon as I save this, the customer is going to get an email that explains how to log on and get registered, and a link to the ePay site. At the same time, all their invoices that are open at the moment are being served out to the invoice, out to the ePay portal. Also, any future payments or invoices done are going to go out to the portal. So if I do more invoices, those will automatically get served out there. If I'm doing payments inside of D365, I want to, of course, reflect that as well. So the updated invoice and the payment history will go out to the portal for the customer to view as well. From the customer standpoint, if they go to the link that comes in the welcome email, they're going to see something like this. You can put your own logos, your own pictures in here. In fact, the style sheets, for the more technical ones, the style sheets and things ship separately, so you can modify those if you want to get a different look and feel to this. I'm going to sign in as a customer. So I sign in as a customer. Normally this comes up to this page. I think it was because I was just signed in previously here today. So it's going to come to this page and show me my open invoices. If I click on one of these, it's going to show me, I have mine set up to show me just a templated version of an invoice. You can have it set up. This again is just a template we did. So if you don't like the template, you can redo the template as well. But normally I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go ahead and pick something to pay. and then, or multiple things to pay, and then go ahead and pay it. Before you do so, the couple things here, again, you can see invoice history, you can see payment history, you can maintain your wallets, what they call wallets. Again, in this, that does support eCheck. Inside of D365, that is a credit card only sort of process. In ePay, it does support, if your gateway supports eCheck, then it's supported here as well. The other piece here, autopay, is an optional piece. If you have this optional piece of autopay, it allows your customers to set up automatic payments. Maybe they don't want to have to remember to come out here when it's due. So they'll tell, to pay every time when an invoice is due, just use my default card and pay it. So, but we are going to just make a manual payment today. By the way, anything I put in these notes, go to and shows up in the payment journal itself. So if the customer wanted to communicate with you, they could. We'll do it this way. And I'll click next. If I didn't have something on file, this is another place I could add a payment. If I have a default one, I'm just simply coming in here and clicking submit and making the payment. Meanwhile, D365 is pulling out here and seeing whenever payments get approved and is pulling those into D365. And we'll take a look at that in a minute. But before we leave the portal, just want to point out a couple different types of logins here. This is a customer login. There is the second kind of type of login is a CSR, so a customer service rep. If I sign in as a customer service rep, the main difference is this becomes a search for customer instead of showing me. So if I'm signing into the customer, it knows who I am. If I'm signing into the customer service rep, first thing you have to do is say, what customer am I trying to deal with here? But the buttons basically stay the same unless you disable or add new buttons on for the CSR role. These would be the default things that would show up. The last one, login, is the admin. That's where you do your initial setup. And one of the key things in there is what types of emails do you want to send out automatically? And it supports really quite a bit on those. If a new invoice is out there, you can send an email to a customer, especially if you have auto pay, where payments might be making kind of, if you will, blind to the customer. You can send back payment approvals or payment declines, so that if that auto pay suddenly failed, you'd want your customer to know that. Things like past due invoices, you can set up emails for, or even for instance, credit cards expiring. All those could be emails that can be sent out. Meanwhile, back in D365, we'll see if this payment made its way back. There is a process that you normally probably aren't in here on a day-to-day basis unless you're having trouble, but we will go to the ePay queue and take a look. Hopefully we got that payment in by now. Hopefully. So here's the payment from ePay that we just did. So you see it came in just a couple minutes, so actually right now almost. It created a payment journal. I did not have mine set up to post this, so it's unposted yet. You can set it up to automatically post right away. You can set it to basically build up this payment journal all day long and then not post till the end of day. It's really kind of up to you as to how often you want it to post. But you can see it settled the invoice I picked out there. There's the note that came in as well. So this, again, this creates this. You can set this to auto post. I didn't set it to auto post, so we'll just manually post this here. But you can see the whole round trip can be pretty fully automated. So once you set the customer up for ePay, invoice goes out to the portal automatically. As long as the customer makes a payment or has auto pay turned on, it's going to come back into D365, create the journal, settle the invoice, post the payment. All that can be completely automated. So the whole round trip, hopefully would be no touch after you create the invoice itself. I'm always out of breath after this. We get through a lot in an hour's time. Any other questions about things you saw today or were hoping to see today? If not, I'll turn it back over to Kelly to wrap it up.
Thanks, Chuck. Thank you everyone for your time today. I'll be following up with the recording. If you liked what you saw today, the next step in our sales process would be to cover up on pricing and generate formal estimates from there. Or if you had any additional questions, we'd be happy to schedule additional time to cover off on those. Thanks again for your time, and I'll be in touch with you shortly. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.